Welcome back to MLG Blue, and we are currently in this best of 5 series between Sen and Vibe. Vibe currently at one game, the first foreigner map victory so far in this tournament, getting off to a flying start there for the Root player. We can also update you on the current situation over at MLG Red if you are not watching on multiple monitors, which you should be, because you are in fact some kind of lead hacksaw. So please, by all means, do go and watch Red as well. Current situation is Innovation from STX Seoul is up one game in the best of 5 series against EG's Huck. We are going into the next map, which will be Cloud Kingdom, and I'm intrigued to see what build orders we'll be seeing out of these guys.
Absolutely, and we're just making sure that the players are indeed ready. And I gotta say, that was a very impressive game number 1 from Vibe, as I think he made a good decision to stick with those mutalisks, because a lot of times what you'll see is players, when they have that pressure at their front of the base, they freak out, they overcommit, they make something like roaches or zerglings, but it's already too late because your opponent had been focusing on making those units, and so he was able to kind of weather the storm, and that's exactly how timing builds work, where if you hold them off and you continue straight ahead without being slowed down at all, then you are just going to wreck their world. But anyways, let's go ahead and hop into the game. Up in the top right side, currently up 1-0 and representing Team Root, it is indeed going to be Vibe.
And down to the southwest position in the red trunks, all the way, oh yes, from the other side of the planet, man. This guy is a hero in his own right, but he's got a mountain to climb. Team Gamma Bears also playing Zerg. He goes by the name of Sen.
And I gotta say, I was talking to both these players before the game was getting started, and actually talking to a lot of the players backstage, and I don't know how they managed to actually travel this much for these tournaments, John. I mean, I only had to fly 3 hours, and I'm exhausted. Some of these players flying 16+ hours. As I was talking to Feast, that's how long he was on a plane.
Oh man!
So that's something to definitely keep in mind. Is day number 1? Not only is there so much pressure, but you also been on a plane for 16 hours, and you haven't necessarily had too much time to warm up. So it's really the players with the core values, the core skills, are the ones who are going to progress.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to the fact, really, that you often see some players just simply not perform all that well at tournaments like this, even though they're smashing it online, or they happen to show up to a tournament that was near their house and they did really well, and so on and so forth. Travel takes a lot out of you as a player and as a commentator, but I think we have the easier job whereby all we need to do is talk. These guys have to focus on playing the games of their lives in one of the toughest formats they have ever had to face on a new game that none of these guys are confident in this game yet.
Yeah,
so
that is why Starcraft, one of the hardest games out there, one of the biggest mental works out there as well. I play one game on ladder, I'm exhausted, so definitely have to hand it to these guys for their dedication. Now, speaking of which, I feel like we're continuing the gentleman's agreement in that they are going the same build. Now, it is a slight variation. Of course, we're going to be seeing a pool first and then expansion, whereas before we saw the hatchery first. But again, we aren't getting any sort of cheese ball build order wins.
Not yet.
As it goes towards a pretty safe early game for both these players.
Yeah, I think we might. If Vibe goes up 2-0, I have a feeling that the next game we could end up seeing something like a bit of 10-pool speed. I don't think we'll see anything uber cheesy. 10-pool's an aggressive opening, but it's not an all-in. So we might see that maybe. But it's interesting that both of them went pool instead of hatchery. I just feel probably because it's just a slightly smaller map, they feel, oh, right, well, if the other guy decides to get a bit more aggressive, I've just got to be ready for that. And I'm not going to be ready if I go hatch first. So we will see. And this just means that over the first couple of minutes of the game, we may see a little bit of poking and prodding. They both grabbed gas around the same time, and they both have 3 workers in the gas. Always something to bear in mind. Sometimes we see a gas build from Zerg, which is just 1 worker, and that's designed to tick over to 100 to get lair at a particularly appropriate time. With all 3 in gas, that indicates that they're going to do 1 or 2 things. They're either going to go speed really early, or they're looking for either early Roach Swarm or early Baneling Nest. It's usually speed. So they're both going to be grabbing that at about the same time, and then we'll see where this game progresses. I think it's fairly likely that we will see a return by one of these players to Spire play at some point. It's so dominant mid-game, why would you not?
Yeah, I mean, Spire and ZVZ is so good. There's so many options now, especially the Swarm Host being added into kind of that lair tech stage of the game. We'll see if players decide to go for that. But one thing that I always think is interesting about best of 5s is, of course, your first game is always important because it's going to be setting, kind of your mindset for the rest of the series. But I would also argue that the second game is almost as important, if not more important, because what the second game is going to decide is whether it's a tie, which is essentially now a best of 3, or whether one player is 2 games up, which is just ridiculous. That means you're 1 game away from being eliminated. So at this point of the tournament, Vibe, if he hunkers down and gets that game, he's going to be in good shape. I feel like if Sin is able to take this game and tie it up, he's going to be feeling much more confident because now it's a tied series, and Sin just basically says, I have to win a best of 3 now.
Yeah, I feel in most circumstances when a player goes up 2-0, the majority of the time he's going to 3-0 sweep, because if you are the guy who is down 2 games in that series, you have a lot more factors to consider. With a couple of games in hand, you can throw out builds that would be more risky, that have a chance of losing, but also have a chance of paying off big. So that means that you've got to be thinking, is my opponent going to cheese me in game 3? Or is he going to be playing straight up? So Sen needs to win this, I feel, to get back into this game, and we'll see how it turns out. A little bit of a run-by going on right here. Sen is actually building a lot of lings, and this is an interesting move, considering usually you don't build that many lings at the start because they're easy to cancel out with defensive banelings, especially on narrow ramps. But if you can make a run through the natural, for instance, especially considering that this is going to get really messy right now because there's actually no banelings yet for Vibe. Oh, wow. Sen is going extreme with this. Here's the banelings coming in from Vibe. Now, the question is, he's going to triple evolution chamber wall this area. This is a nice move, really nice move, a delaying tactic. Now, having more banelings than your opponent in this situation is not necessarily great because, of course, you know, a smaller number of banelings can cancel out a larger number, but what's going to happen is going to be a big bust through the front here.
And the Queens are able to absorb a lot of that damage. The Banelings not even killing off the Queens. The 2 Evo Chambers, he may actually cancel these because at this point there's really not a use for them. He does decide to let them finish. Drones pulled off the line, but like I was saying, if Sin can get a little bit of momentum here off of this, he's got to be in great shape. 1 detonation there on the drones, got to be bringing them super low. Vibe scrambling around, but he's got no answer. He's got his own lings on the way, but it's not going to be enough. There are so many Zerglings being produced right now by both of these players, and I just don't think it's going to be enough here for Vibe. He's losing so many drones and supplies, 36 now to 66, and as we were saying, man, this could quickly be brought into a best of 3 as Sen is just crushing through this game.
Yeah, straight up 2 base committal to Baneling and Ling, which was absolutely the right thing to do. And Vibe held the initial assault pretty well. Triple Evo wall off, great idea. Also managed to move in his Banelings and get good trades, efficient splashes, but it wasn't quite good enough to hold that many Lings and that many Banelings. And now Vibe is in a really tough spot. It's unlikely he'll be able to come back from this position. In come more Baneling detonations. If he can hold against this, even if he holds against this, what does he gain from it? He doesn't really gain anything. And there's the GG, nice and quickly there. And Sen pulls it back to 1 apiece.